Can everyone hear us online? If you can hear us online, would you type something in the chat?
Testing. Well, I can tell who the devoted and the ones who really are interested in indoor quality because it's late in the afternoon and it's a long day already, right? I've never been to a conference that kept you after hours unless we were having a party. But I guess the party's later tonight. So, but thank you for joining us. My name's Mansell Nelson, and I'm with the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals. And my assistant is EPA staff, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Eileen Shanahan, and I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator for Region 9. We've got a table outside with some materials as well.
I work on the environmental education stuff too. So Eileen and I have teamed up a few times before, but she offered to help me out with some of the supplies. So I appreciate her doing that. So if you're not familiar with the Institute, we serve all 574 federally recognized tribes throughout the nation with a variety of services, training, education, technical assistance, and policy services. So if you're not familiar with our program and you think you might need some of those things, I also have a table outside and be happy to talk to you about our various programs. But today I'm here to talk about one of the things that is really important to me and to you too. So as in Florence Nightingale's time, she knew the connection between healthy homes and healthy people. So she thought it was pretty important, and I agree with her. I'm a person with asthma. I'm a person that's moving along in years. I haven't been officially diagnosed with COPD, but my lungs have accumulated a little bit of damage over the years. And so I'm one of those that's really sensitive to air quality issues. And so I'm really motivated to help all of you do better at indoor quality because I want to come visit you and I want to be able to breathe when I come visit. So I'm here today to help a little bit. Of course, you know, in 50 minutes, I'm not going to cover every detail, but I'm going to do some broad strokes and encourage you to continue your efforts to learn about improving our indoor environments. So as you can see on the slide, there's many health effects that we can experience from bad air quality. Some of them are transitory, so might experience briefly, or as soon as we get away from it, the symptoms will subside. Others are much longer term. For example, staying in these hotels is really hard for me. They use a lot of perfume products, and the casinos allow some smoking and things like that. But once I get outside, I do a little better. But I do have concerns about cumulative exposures over time. After a couple of years of pandemic mode of working from home, I went to a pulmonologist, and he says, "Well, you don't have asthma." I said, "Well, I certainly do, but I've been living at home with 3 HEPA filters, with nobody coming around bothering me except by computer." And later, after he did more testing, he said, "Yeah, you do have asthma," but he had to agree that avoiding all the triggers made a huge difference. Oh, okay. I thought somebody was protesting. We'll cover some of these topics as we have time, but you've already got a couple things to take away with you. The radon test kits. So we'll hopefully have time to talk about those briefly, but if we don't, the instructions are in the kit. It's supposed to be a do-it-yourself kind of thing, but feel free to reach out to me if you do have questions, and we'll try to spend a couple of minutes on that. Because as an engineer, I'm really into seeing the unseen, and we have tools to help us do that. So it's good when we're talking about air quality to first talk about how our lungs work. The main characteristic of our lungs is that the air in front of us gets deep into our body very quickly, and it's a pretty direct path. Now, there's some mechanisms our body has to screen out a few things, but not a lot. And once it gets to our lungs, it's distributed throughout our entire body. And so my first experiences dealing with air quality was in the military, and I was a chemical officer. So I was protecting our soldiers from war gases. And now I'm trying to protect all of us from lots of other things, maybe not as toxic, but certainly over time can be as hazardous. And of course, once it gets into our bloodstream, our heart pushes it everywhere. So contaminants getting into our body through the air in our lungs are distributed throughout. And one of the things I want to plug, and those are some of my grandkids, and my wife is going to kill me if she finds out I put a picture of her there, so don't tell her. But our young children are particularly vulnerable to air pollution. I don't blame my parents, but we lived in a coal-burning neighborhood when I was growing up, and houses were all stacked. It was Baltimore, Maryland, and all of us were burning coal in our homes. And I'm convinced that that's part of the reason why I have more respiratory problems than some of my siblings that were born years later after we left Baltimore. But things that we do to damage our children's lungs can follow them literally for a lifetime. So I just want to put a special plug in for kids. So these are my basic principles for air quality. I like to keep things simple. So if you learn these 3 things, I think you can do everything about air quality. Of course, there's a lot of detail to flesh in. But the first thing we do is keep things out. And so I've been telling people for quite a while now that I can't retire until all the tribal casinos are non-smoking. So I might be working for a long time, but I solicit all of your help to help tribes realize that we don't really want smoking in an indoor space. I know this was a tough one, and I am not saying that I won't retire until all wood stoves are replaced, because that's a huge effort. But I'm convinced that those communities that do use wood stoves, this is a huge air quality issue for them. And so EPA has invested a lot of resources into helping people use better practices. There's a lot of efforts put into EPA certifications of stoves. It's a big issue. And then there's carbon monoxide. It's unfortunate that we see deaths from carbon monoxide from time to time, because there are ways to protect ourselves, one of which is an alarm, which one of the things I want to emphasize about carbon monoxide alarms is they protect our life, not our health, because carbon monoxide levels can be sub-alarm and still be harmful to us. So that's a key point that a lot of people don't always realize. And then there's radon. So I want to save a life today. You guys gonna cooperate with me? I like to save lives, don't you? So I want you to go home and test your house for radon. And I'm serious. I mean, I may not save your life, but maybe somebody in your family. 22,000 deaths a year estimated by EPA related to radon. It's a cancer agent, and we don't want to have that in our homes. And it's pretty simple to test. And these kits were donated by AirCheck for use in tribal communities. So that's why you're getting them today, and they're for testing your own home. You don't have to write a quote for it because you got them free, and they're you're going to do this on your own time. You're not going to do it on your paid time, so no quotes necessary. But there are instructions in the kit to help you conduct the tests, and if you have any questions about conducting the test or about test results, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help. Many of you already have folks in your tribe that are working with radon, and so they'd be happy to help. And there is a national helpline as well, but feel free to reach out. This is a big one for me. I already mentioned it, but many of the cleaning and disinfecting products that are used are really problematic for those of us that have lung issues, and they can be actually a problem for everybody because of chronic exposures. And we're learning more and more about all of these chemicals that we're bringing into our homes. We're bringing them to schools, we're bringing them to daycares. And I'm really trying to encourage us to look at other products, and there's lots of options. Safer choice is one way. EPA disinfecting, let's see, what's it called? Where's Eileen? Oh, there you are. EPA's disinfectant designed for the environment program. There we go. I knew that she'd help me out with that. Oh, it's right up there. I should look at my own slides. So at least for me, it's a really big issue. And I can tell you that in public spaces, the challenge is that for about 1 out of 20 or 30 people, it's a big issue too. And for the rest of us, it's helpful to be exposed to less toxins. And people use these chemicals thinking they're making things better, and oftentimes they're not. And so, I could spend, well, more than an hour just on this alone, but I'm just going to keep moving along here. EPA during COVID did do this nice little infographic that I really like. I've added a few things to it on my own presentation, like using microfiber that they don't mention. But one of the things that I really loved is they talk about, I don't know, maybe I can't use the pointer, but I really like the fact they talk about soap and water. When I go into classrooms, I spend a lot of time visiting schools. I try to convert all the teachers over from disinfecting wipes, which I'll have a slide on, to microfiber and soap and water. And well, it's great. It does a lot of good, eliminates a lot of things that we might be concerned about in our homes, in our schools, and it does it without causing harm. So this is on the EPA website. I put the link there so that you could access it, but it's a great little infographic about cleaning. I did want to mention integrated pest management. Can you think of anything scarier than going into a daycare and being told that over the last couple of weeks they've found 5 scorpions? Yeah, I did this a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, what? You're talking about, little children. Gee, that looks fun. And they'd been trying things like spraying lots of chemicals around and stuff, and it wasn't working. And scorpions are particularly resistant to chemicals. So, you know what it boiled down to? Door sweeps. And so I showed them pictures. I said, this is a 2 scorpion entrance. This is a 5 scorpion entrance. Many of their doors needed some repair work. And it scared me to think about scorpions mixed with young children. And then maybe even scarier was the fact that they were using all these chemicals to try to kill all these scorpions. And I'm worried about the children's exposure. So I really encourage getting into IPM for our indoor environments. And there's a program called Stop Pests out of Cornell University that would love to work with your tribal housing office. So again, and then there's also cooperative service through land-grant universities. Many of them have IPM programs, and I've worked with several across the nation. Just recently, up in Portland, Oregon, I worked with one out of Oregon State. So really encourage you to investigate IPM and consider adopting it tribal-wide. And if you need some training resources, reach out to me or to Stop Pests for training. So that was all discussion about source control, and I could go on, but the idea is keep the bad stuff out. So let's talk about ventilation briefly. There are some issues with ventilation. It costs money, especially in a heating or cooling scenario. And then what about these wildfire events we've been having lately? Ventilation is about bringing outside air in. So there are issues with ventilation, but it's very important to have some ventilation. And one of the things, and Eileen, if you were here in the previous presentation, talked about exhaust fans for both kitchens and bathrooms. So exhausting out stuff that is undesirable is really important. And particularly if you're cooking with gas stoves, I think ventilating your kitchen is really important. And then we just need some outside air brought in to mix with and dilute pollutants, because one of the things we don't want to remove is people. And sorry to tell you, you all stink. I do too, but we all stink as humans. I mean, we are biological organisms. And yes, Delbert, you too. So, Delbert was checking his armpits. That's why I'm picking on him. But we all stink, and so I mean, we need some level of ventilation. And in places where a lot of people congregate, we need more. And so ventilation is critical. But it's also necessary for diluting pollutants in our homes. And then there's air cleaning. So Air cleaning is not a substitute for the other two. So in other words, like some casinos have said, well, we can clean the air. Yeah, not really. So it's not a substitute for the other two, and that's why it's actually number 3 on my list. So notice number 3, source control and ventilation are preferred strategies, but air cleaning at times is essential. And Eileen also mentioned air cleaning in the previous presentation, but we want to look at our existing HVACs. What kind of filtration? Can we do any upgrades? Be careful of this because your HVAC may not be designed for improving your filtration because you might get too much pressure drop across the filter, and that can cause other problems. But air cleaning is not effective for gaseous pollutants. So we got to be thoughtful about that. And to be effective, the air has to move through the filter. And you know what? You got to maintain these things. So how many EPA people do we have in the room? A couple. No, I meant tribal. I mean, not tribal. I mean, US EPA people. Okay. Close your ears for a minute. No. I know you weren't responsible for this, and I know that it's part of the EPA process, but they registered Lysol air sanitizer as an air sanitizer. And oh, I threw fits that day when I found out. But when you read the news release, all those bullets on the side, yeah, it's the first antimicrobial product registered for by the EPA. Okay, you're supposed to use it in a closed, unoccupied room. Automatically, that throws out 97% of people using the spray because they go around spraying all kinds of stuff, kids, whatever, present. Don't do that. Ventilate after you spray. Well, that seems like a good idea. In fact, ventilate until everything's out. Now, remember I said source control is our first priority. There's no lingering efficacy. It does not replace standard practices and does not constitute endorsement. So after I read that list, I realize what we're really saying is, yeah, we're going to register this product, but it's worthless. Okay? In fact, it's worse than worthless. It could be harmful. It does not sanitize the air. Okay? I'm a chemist. I can tell you that air chemistry is very complex, and spraying some gunk in the air is not going to sanitize your air. So don't do it. Okay, EPA staff, you can unplug your ears now. Okay. So, you know, there's been a lot of interest lately in portable filters throughout the pandemic, of course. One of the things that I kept talking to tribal staff about is don't use the unproven technologies. And time after time, I saw newspaper articles, et cetera, about tribes investing millions of dollars in what I call CRAP. It's a new acronym, and I think you know what it spells, right? My wife says I'm not supposed to use 4-letter words, but it's crap. There's a lot of stuff out there, and they talk about it being new, but it's actually just repackaged technology. It's been around for a long time, and they're repackaging it and selling it to us, and it's crap. So now, someday in the future, we may find out that something works. That's why we have research and we test things, etc. But as of right now, I'm not aware of anything that works better than HEPA. So HEPA is a well-proven technology. It works. It cleans our air from particles, and we don't want to use the ionization, bipolar ionization, hydrogen peroxide. Well, it's powdered or not powdered, dry hydrogen peroxide, and other means of trying to clean our air. HEPA. HEPA's good stuff. The rest of it, let's avoid it. So that's kind of background in general about air quality. I want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about schools and homes because that's what I advertised. So for homes, I didn't realize I was going to present right after Eileen and Gillian, but this concept came from Tribal Healthy Homes Network. And basically it's a toolkit for education. And it includes things like green cleaning products. It can include other things that can help you create a healthy home. And of course you design your own. The concept is what I'm referring to. So, not every home's gonna need a moisture meter. If you don't have a wood stove, maybe they don't need that or don't use that. But a lot of these things we can use in our homes. One of my favorite to distribute is the Bonamy. So the second box over, I don't seem to have enough power with my laser here, is really popular amongst the elders, I found out. So I was giving a Hopi elder a can of Bonamy, and she was just so delighted. She hadn't seen it for decades. And it's an old product, but a very useful one. It doesn't have bleach in it. It doesn't have a bunch of perfumes in it. It's just a scrubbing agent. So it's a replacement for those kinds of things. But lots of options to be looking at. Another one that I highly recommend is a humidity meter for all homes. We should all know what our humidity levels are. It's actually a health issue because if we're too dry, then it's stressful on our lungs. If we're too moist, we tend to grow mold. And there's lots of other issues as well. Both too dry and too wet, bacteria tend to be more of a problem, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding and measuring our moisture is a good idea for everybody. And they used to be $10, but prices keep going up. So I think up to about $13 or $14 a piece, but you might still be able to find some cheaper. HUD does publish a guide for, actually a series of guides for us to help us with a healthy home. So there's a series of 4 different booklets. This one is specifically targeted to us as occupants to help us have a healthy home. And a key thing for healthy homes is partnerships. So I know that most of you don't control your tribal housing office, but you might talk to them about opportunities to improve and make homes healthier places and how you can work together to get that, and maybe bring in the folks from the clinic in that discussion. The folks in the clinic know who the families are that have children with asthma that could benefit from a healthier home and maybe reduce their ER visits. For me, doing home assessments, that's one of my favorite things to do is help young people that are making ER visits. And I often get called in that case where they've made 2 or 3 ER visits, and what can we do? And I can always find lots of things that can help improve the home to make it a safer place for those students. So working together as partners is really important. So I'm going to move on to schools because I have 20 minutes until you're going to go get ready for your party tonight. What is tonight? Is it bowling, or which is it bowling? I have to tell you a story about my wife. So she took a bowling class in college, and the first time that she went down the lane to bowl, she hit herself in the back of the leg with the bowling ball and knocked herself over, fell flat on her bum. I was not there. I would have laughed. And she got up, dusted herself off, and walked off and never went to class again. She got an F in her class. So anyway, that's my bowling story. You guys have fun tonight. Don't hit yourselves with the bowling ball, okay? So in our classroom, Indoor quality is a big deal. It affects our students' ability to learn. It affects their health. So it's a academic issue. It's a health issue. I would like to think that most of our school staff would want healthy children, but unfortunately, I find out that many of the school staff don't start paying attention until I tell them, I can improve your test scores. And then they say, how? It's like, okay, well, but both of those are true. And of course, teachers are the ones that spend a lot of time in the classroom. I'm a former classroom teacher, and I was in the classroom, well, I said from hell, because it was really bad. I taught there for 6 years, and it took me that long to get the classroom back in shape that it should have been, including replacing the roof and getting new air conditioning things and all kinds of stuff. Recently with the COVID, then we've been concerned about transfer of viruses. And the last couple of winters, there's been a lot of discussion about a possible tri-pandemic where we might see flu, viruses, and RSV. Helping all of those is really the same solution. And a lot of it comes back to improving our ventilation. So that's really valuable for helping our students both learn better and to be healthier. So I told you that I'd come back to this one. So how many of you go into school classrooms on a regular basis? Well, okay. We've got a couple. I do. And you know what every classroom comes stocked with? Those things, disinfecting wipes. Most of them are Clorox. When you read the label, it says, keep out of the reach of children. And you know what teachers are doing? They're handing them to kids and they're wiping their desks. And, you know, as we started opening schools after the pandemic, they were wiping their desk every class period, all 30 students, all at the same time. And by the way they were doing it wasn't disinfecting because there's this thing called dwell time, but they were exposing themselves and the classroom and the teacher to all the chemicals that are in these wipes. And it drives me bonkers even thinking about it. But we're putting into the hands of children chemicals that they have no business touching. So instead of using these, let's use microfiber, soap, and water. And there's plenty of guides from EPA that can be helpful. The Sensible Steps to a Healthier School is a great place to start. It's less than 20 pages. But if you're going to be really ambitious, you can go to the Tools for Schools program, which is about 500 pages. It has lots of useful materials. So I try to ease people into it by using this and then graduate them to this. And of course, I use a lot of these resources myself as I go into schools and work with schools on improving their healthy environment. One of the key features is a lot of checklists to help look at the school and see what it needs to be a healthier place. And there's also frameworks to help us think about school stuff. So I've got 15 minutes left, and I've got the best part I kept for last, at least what I like the best, and that's seeing the unseen. So on your tables, there are a couple of meters. Those are not gifts. Leave them behind. I'm going to take them and use them again. I use them in trainings. I use them in schools. So don't take them with you, but I just wanted to show you some technologies that are available. These fit in the broad category of lowest cost sensors. And I'm not trying to sell you this particular product, but these are some that I've been using. And there's many other products on the market that you might want to look at, but they help me see the unseen. So carbon dioxide measurements, the little box that says CO2 check is carbon dioxide. And it's not a chemical that I'm worried about poisoning our students, because in all the schools I've been in and all the measurements I've made, I've never seen carbon dioxide levels that I would consider toxic. You can get to toxic carbon dioxide levels, just like you can get toxic water levels. But what we do use this tool for is indirect measurement of ventilation. And so I think, yeah, I have another slide on the numbers, but it's a fairly inexpensive way to assess the ventilation, but it does have limitations. Oftentimes when I talk to a principal about assessing their building, they say, well, classes get out at 3 o'clock, we'll see you then. I say, no, that's not gonna work. I need students breathing in the classroom in order for me to use this instrument. There are other ways to do the tests, but they're expensive and laborious. You got to haul around tanks of carbon dioxide and fill up the room and do measurements and math. Who likes math? Oh, I love math, but anyway, it takes math and other things. So with doing carbon dioxide measurements with people present is really both economic and a quick assessment. Now, what I'd really recommend is having a carbon dioxide meter in every classroom all the time. But until we get there, by the way, California passed the law and Nevada passed the law. But until we get there, I carry around with me and take these measurements. So here's the numbers. Pre-pandemic, we talked about 1050, 1100 as being adequate. Well, that's before we gained a better understanding of viruses and how they're transferred. So not to get too yucky here, you know, this is not about body odor, Delbert. So it's at 1100, we're rebreathing about 10% of the air in the room. We're rebreathing 10% of the air in the room. At 700, I forget, this pointer doesn't work. At 700, we're rebreathing 1%. Well, 1% is a lot better than 10%, and 1% protects us to a degree from the transfer of viruses. So the new numbers are good, 800, 700 is even better. 650 gets expensive, but it's really good. And if you can get it down to 400, yay, that's outside. Might be cheaper to just go outside. But the numbers help us evaluate and assess whether or not we've got adequate ventilation. And a couple sensors. So the CO2 check is the one on your tables. And what are you reading right now? I know you just breathed on yours, so it might be high. 660. We're in the excellent range. Anybody else? You didn't get one? Oh, you got one. Oh, you got two of the other. Huh. Eileen, what'd you do? Okay, that one needs to be recalibrated. It's probably, it's reading, no, it's just reading low. You got to recalibrate these things regularly, but, and I didn't recalibrate them all since the last time I used them for this group, but, so there's one device. They're about $150 to $200 a piece, and you can find a wide range of devices on the market. The Tel-Air is one that's been around for a long time, but I use it a lot. But there's a lot of other sensors. So, you know, look at your budget and consider how much you want to invest in these. But kind of gives you an idea. If it's less than $100, I'd be suspicious. So PM measurements, it turns out the virus is a particle, right? So if you have high particles, you might have some virus in there. So the particle meters don't tell you if they have virus or not, but they will tell you if they have high particle levels. And the lower the particles, the better. There are some EPA standards for outdoor air, but they don't really apply to indoor. In fact, they don't. But lower is better. And again, there's a variety of products. So the little white box you have is a wind tracker. Its main feature, the reason I selected it, it's the cheapest I could find. So I'm not saying it's particularly precise, but we did compare it to some other sensors, and it seemed to do pretty good. But right now, they seem to have gone out of production. I don't know if they're going to go back into production, but you got to pair it up with a phone in order to use it. And it's called, well, if you go online, it's the Wind Tracker. If you, well, I finish up, if you want to download the app to your phone, and you can attach it Bluetooth to the tracker, and you can find out what our particle levels are in here. Of course, again, there's lots of other devices that will give us particles in a wide range of costs. So if you're going to do these measurements, check it out. I'm happy to discuss it with you. A lot of it's can be cost-driven and purpose-driven. You can get a 5,000 PM meter, but you're going to give that to a high school kid? I never did. My first one cost $5,000. Nobody touched that except me. But these $75 ones, I give them out to kids and people and let them play around with it. In workshops, people wear them. They go to restaurants and find out that some restaurants are horrible for air quality, etc. Another device that I like to use to help me understand what's going on in a space are smoke puffers. And I didn't bring one of those today. People like to play with them, and they pollute the air. They make smoke. But it's a non-toxic smoke, the one I use. It's not a quantitative measure, but it is qualitative. And it's important for figuring out airflows. So, for example, bathrooms. I check all the bathrooms in a school, and I'm figuring out whether the airflow is in or out. Why does it matter? Well, we know why it matters. Because people are doing things in bathrooms that we don't want to smell in the hallway, right? So we want that airflow going the other way. Now, what happens in over 50% of the samples that I've done is the airflow is going the other way. So what do people do? They don't like the smell, so they get air fresheners, and they pollute the heck out of the air, covering up the smell. So I was just telling my boss this morning that sometimes the cover up is worse than the sin or whatever it is we're trying to cover up. With using air fresheners, that's my opinion. I'd rather smell somebody's fart than somebody's air freshener, but that's just me. So measurements can help us with our goal of maintaining good ventilation, reducing particles, and figure out how airflows are moving around. So I call that seeing the unseen. ITEP, we have lots of resources for you. We do trainings on indoor quality. We've got one coming up. If you've already had some level of training, you might want to consider our diagnostics course. It's being offered at Las Vegas, and we'll introduce you to some of the instrumentation way beyond what I've talked about here, and spend some time looking at homes and figuring out how to assess homes. We also have online trainings and webinars and videos. And of course, EPA has a lot of information as well. I highly recommend that. Now, if you go to a website and they're trying to sell you something, do you trust everything they say? Okay, you'd be amazed how many people do. Okay, just keep in mind, as a rule of thumb, and I'm not saying all vendors are bad people, I work with them all the time, but if they're trying to sell you something, double check the information that they're giving you. And some of them have gotten sneakier and sneakier about how they do it. They write a nice article about indoor quality. I agree with 95% of it. And then at the bottom, they have a link and they're trying to sell you something. Be careful, be cautious. be thoughtful. So I'm open to questions, and we have a prize to give away. So I don't know how, we got 5 minutes, so we need a question. In the back, we got runners. Okay, and it looks like you had your hand up too, and you're closer. So I'm going to ask you first, and then there's one in the back. She was all the way back. The redhead. I think it was the redhead. No. Well, you look red from here. What can I say? Go ahead.
I actually have two questions. Pam from Augustine Band of Kui Indians. Why are children more susceptible to poor air quality? And why do you recommend spraying on, actually 3 questions, on the towel rather than spraying on the table? Is it because there's spread, I imagine, some different kind of spray? Third one is, why do you prefer microfiber towels when they're made out of plastic?
Oh, would ask that one. By the way, here's your prize. But you asked me a really tough question. I'm going to let's see. Now, what was the first one? Why are children more susceptible? They're smaller, but they breathe more per body weight. Their immune systems are still developing. Is Gillian still on? No. So mostly they're still developing immune systems, and they're just more susceptible to damage, and the damage is for a lifetime. So if I damage my lungs now, what have I got? I don't know, 10 or 15 years? 20. I got 20. But with a child, you're damaging their lungs for an entire lifetime. So, okay, so number 2 was spray. Okay, I have to tell a quick story. So I got a call from a tribal administrator in Alaska, and she was asking me, should my child smell like ammonia coming back from school? And you've already figured out I'm a little bit of a smart aleck. So I said, well, if she's not peeing her pants, then no, she shouldn't smell like ammonia coming back from school. So I talked to the daycare. Well, it wasn't a daycare. It was like a Head Start. And I said, we need to talk about your cleaning practices. And she was very defensive because she thought I was going to tell her to stop cleaning. And I didn't. I just wanted her to tell me what she's doing. Well, it turns out that the way they were cleaning is while the students were present, they'd come along with a spray. And I know enough physics that I could see that spray hitting the table, bouncing off and hitting the kids. So they were literally spraying the kids and then wiping the table. So we talked about it. Well, could we take the kids outside? Well, it's minus 40. Okay, take them to the next room. And do the cleaning while the children are present, ventilate, and then let the kids back in. Could we do that? And of course, the kid didn't smell like ammonia anymore. Now, as far as more directly your question, that was part of it. But when we do sprays in the air, we're contaminating the air. And so, in the short amount of time I had, I didn't get into like these electrostatic sprayers and all these different things that were used during the pandemic, but we're contaminating the air with these sprays. And in fact, what I really recommend is a bucket of soapy water and microfiber so that I'm not spraying anything. So anyway, that's why it's considered a best practice not to just spray. Have you ever been in a restaurant where they're cleaning the tables? Drives me insane when they come and they well, stay away from my table, but they're still doing the table next to me and they're spraying all that gunk. And here I am trying to breathe and eat and everything at the same time. No, it's not good. What was your third question? Well, they clean better, but I know why you're asking the question, because there are some concerns about the micro fibers breaking off and into our environment. And I'm not gonna go there right now. I'm just gonna admit that yes, it's a concern. But the reason is because microfiber cleans better. It traps the dust. And combined with soapy water, for example, it's much better at cleaning. So I'd have to do a lifetime assessment, which I have not done, to compare. I think my time's up.
It is, but we can stay because it's the last one, right?
It is the last one, but I know you guys want to go bowling.
Other questions, we don't have to end it if there's other questions.
But just quickly to finish answering your question, thank you. So, it'd be a balance, and I don't have a good answer, But yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, and I think there was a question in the back.
What are your thoughts on bleach?
Oh, you know the answer to that.
Mic drop.
So the quick answer, because we're out of time, bleach is a disinfectant, and people use it as a cleaner. It's not a cleaner, it's a disinfectant. So that's part of the answer. The other part of the answer is bleach is toxic. So we want to be cautious and only use it when we absolutely need to use it, which there might be situations we do, but there are options, like, for example, hydrogen peroxide does a great job, does the same thing as bleach, but it doesn't leave behind the residual chlorine, which is toxic to our lungs. It turns into hydrochloric acid in our lungs, so it's very irritating. So yeah, my mother loves bleach. I have not converted her from not using it, but she's 85 years old and she's not going to change. So if you want to use your bleach, go right ahead, but have mercy on your children and protect them. And if you do insist on using bleach, don't mix it with other stuff and ventilate well, okay? So are you the redhead that was raising your hand? I swear I saw the lady in the back raising your hand, but I guess it was you. All right, so thanks for being here. I'll be here tomorrow as well, and I do have a table just outside the room, so stop by and we can have discussions or talk about stuff, or I can come to work with you like I have done with some others, and in your own community. That's really my favorite thing to do. If my boss will let me go and pay my travel, he's standing in the back of the room. So then I can come to your community and work with you directly, which is, like I say, my preferred way to do things. But, we have a variety of training opportunities and stuff as well. And I encourage you to go and get reliable sources and information to work on healthy schools, healthy homes. It'll improve the health of your community. And particularly watch out for our children. So thank you.